Hey, so in this video, I want to walk you through the warm-up exercise that we always do at the beginning of a Tai Chi class. And this is also something that you can always do multiple times, throughout the day, just to, loosen up your muscles and joints a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna start from bottom up. The first one is our toe exercise. So the first exercise, and I'm demonstrating with my hands since you can't really see my toes. So we're gonna pull back our toes, hold, and release. Pull back our toes, hold, and release. Pull back our toes, hold, release. Pull back our toes, hold, release. Pull back our toes, hold, and release. So when we're doing this exercise, the key is that your weight should be on the heel of your feet, right? So don't put your weight on the ball of your feet, and then when you pull back your toes, you're gonna see that your body move and go back, move, and go back. So put your weight on the heel of your feet. So your toes are actually relaxed, and you can pull back your toes without moving your body at all. Now, the next exercise, if you have any issue with your balance, or you just want to make sure that you don't put too much weight on your toes, what we're gonna do is just put a little bit of pressure on your toes. We're gonna press, hold, and release. Press, hold, release. Press, hold, release. Press, hold, release. Press, hold, and release. Now we're gonna do the other foot, same thing. Press, hold, release. Press and hold, release. Press, hold, release. Press, hold, release. Press, hold, and release. So when you're doing this exercise, depends on how tight your toe joints actually are. You might actually not feel anything if they're actually not that very tight, right? So if you don't feel very tight, you don't really have to go all the way until you feel something, because in this position, you can see that my knee is already beyond the front point of my foot. So while I'm doing this, I'm actually putting more stress on my knee instead of my toe joints. And I actually want everyone to avoid doing this. So make sure your knees not go beyond your toes, and just do a gentle stretch. If you don't really feel much, that's actually a good thing. Okay, now the third exercise, we're gonna move on to our ankle. So the first exercise, what we're gonna do is to move from having your heel on the floor to having your toe on the floor, and make sure that your supporting leg, the knee is bent a little bit. So, and again, in this exercise, we want to actively move our ankle instead of using your knee to complete this move. So heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe. One more time, heel to toe. So you can see that when I am actively moving my ankle, my foot can almost stay in the same spot. But of course, if you go a little bit forward and backwards, that's fine as well, as long as you're moving your ankle. So now the other foot, heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe, heel to toe, and heel to toe. Okay, now the next exercise, what we're going to do is to move from having the outside of your foot on the floor to have the inside of your foot on the floor. So again, the key is to put your weight on the supporting leg and maybe just a little bit weight on the foot that they are working on, right? We don't want to put too much weight that if you are not careful enough, you might actually roll your ankle. So outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, and inside. Now the other foot. Outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, and inside. Very good. So now the next exercise, we're going to move to our knees. So put your hands on your knees. And again, we're just going to draw like tiny circles, right? We don't have to go with this motion because it's actually very hard to control your movement and you might actually hurt yourself. So a small movement like this would be perfect. All we want to do is warm up our knees a little bit. And there's not a certain number of circles that you have to draw, as long as you feel like your knees are warmed up and then you're done. So we're going to go one direction first, and then we're going to go the other direction. I typically just do 10 circles each direction. Okay, very good. And now we're going to move on to our hips. So the first exercise, have your feet shoulder width. And we're just going to draw a big circle at your hip level. And again, definitely pay close attention to how you feel, right? You want to push to the point that you feel a little bit stretching, but you shouldn't feel any pain or pinches, right? So if you feel that, work around it. Typically, you will have to reduce your range of motion. Definitely do not push through anything. And then we're going to go the other direction. I'm sure everyone has done, many times of this, even before our Tai Chi classes. So this is now some tricky new movement. Okay, very good. And now the next hip exercise, we're just going to gently push your hip to one side until you feel some gentle stretch on the outside of your hip or hip complex. So in this exercise, if you have your feet relatively close to each other, so shoulder width or even a little bit closer, when you push, you probably only will feel the stretch on the outside of your hip. But if you expand your stance a little bit, stance a little wider, when you do that, you might also feel some stretch on the inside of your thigh. So it's really up to you. Either way is fine. However, if you're taking a wider stance, make sure that you don't feel a lot of stress in your knees, because that's not where you should be feeling the stress. So I'm just going to go with the original way, right? Feet shoulder width or even a little bit narrower. So press, hold, and release. Press and hold and release. Press and hold, release, press, hold, and release. Now the other side. Press and hold, release. Press and hold, release. Press, hold, and release. So now in this video, I want to show you something that I haven't taught in the classes, which is another great exercise to stretch your hip complex. So essentially the movement is, put your one knee on the floor and then just do this, right? Do a gentle stretch. And you want to stretch to the point where you feel some stretching, feel some stretches right here, right on, still on the side of your hip. So we're just gonna go like this. And with the other side, it's the same thing. We're gonna go like that, right? So, but typically that actually works a little better for me, but for you, if you feel like, having your knees on the floor is a little too tough, you don't have to do this at all, or you can actually put a pad or like a pillow, a very thin pillow though, not something that's very thick, pillow underneath your knee just to, get rid of the pressure. So just something for you to consider. Okay, now we're gonna move on and move up to our arms. So remember, we're actually using the form with hands like clouds to warm up our arms. So basically, we're gonna start with just the hands. Right, this is a very small movement. There are barely any movement in your shoulder, mostly in your elbows and your wrist. And then we're gonna add in the trunk rotation, just a little bit to the left and right from the center line. And lastly, we're going to add in the legs, right? Push your weight from side to side. This is actually a good way to warm up your whole body. So we're going to do 5 more rounds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Very good. And now, moving to our favorite exercise, our fingers. Okay, so put your fingertips together, and we're gonna start with just rolling the thumbs. I'm gonna get closer to the camera, right? Just roll our thumbs. So you don't necessarily have to go super quick, right? It's not really about the speed. It's actually about how much control you have over your fingers. So try to move all the finger joints, right? Involve all the joints in your fingers when you're doing this exercise. And then we're gonna go the other direction. And now moving on to our index fingers, same thing, try to involve all the joints. And the other direction. And now our middle fingers. The other direction. And of course, you can do this exercise either standing up or sitting down, and it's really just about your fingers. And now our ring fingers. Now the other direction. And then our pinkies. And the other direction. And that's it. Shake your hands a little bit. So when we're doing this exercise, right, what tends to happen is if you're struggling, with exercise, you tend to get really tense and put a lot of pressure in your fingers, right, and your whole hands tense up, which actually make it even more difficult to move your fingers around. So just try to relax the rest of your hand and focus on the fingers you're actually working on. But of course, it's easier said than done. I just hope that no one will skip this exercise. Okay, now moving on to our shoulders. So first, we're just going to draw very small circles, right? Especially if you have any shoulder issues, you want to start even slower and smaller. Just take your time to warm up your shoulders. And once you feel you're ready, you can increase the range of motion, but slow down the pace. So you can, in addition to this warm up, you can also feel a little bit stretching around your shoulders. Take your time with this. And now we're going to do the other direction. And again, similar to our hip exercise, you do not want to push through anything. If you feel pinches or pain, reduce your range of motion. Very good. And now moving on to our final warm-up exercise, our necks. So first, we're just going to slowly look down until you feel some stretch in the back of your neck. We're going to hold and release. Slowly look up, hold, and release. Slowly to one side, hold, and release. Slowly to the other side, hold, and release. Let's do this one more round. Look down, hold, and release. Look up, hold, and release. To one side, hold, and release. To the other side, hold, and release. And that's it, and also in the Tai Chi classes, because we have limited time, I typically only ask you to hold for like 3 or 4 seconds. But if you're at home and you like the stretch, take your time with this, hold for 8, 10 seconds, and then come back. That's perfectly fine, and it's probably a little bit better in terms of the stretching. Okay, that's all the warm-up exercise.